Good evening. First night of the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race 2022, and the fleet are powering down the New South Wales coast. You will have seen various interviews we've held with the contenders for the 100-footers, and amongst those Mark Bradford, who was talking about VMG Running, and some of you may remember the interview with him last year, looking at triple headers and what needs to be done for the skinny boats to get down as fast as they can downwind. And I did say that I would try and draw together a little bit of an explanation of what VMG Running is, because that's a key part to this. And it's not super complex in principle, but it's a little difficult to grasp perhaps for some. When, like me, you're not super technical. So this is not my own work. This is largely discussions I've held with others like Mark Bradford, and in particular would like to thank Peter Eisler for his fantastic weather routing that he did with Expedition software for this race just before the race got started, because that really helped to sort of explain the whole idea that lies behind VMG. So what is VMG? Well, effectively, whether it's upwind or downwind, it's really the fastest way between A and B. And that ends up being a balance between the distance, in other words, how much you're pointing towards your destination, and speed. And that's a very delicate balance, because if you point too far towards it, you slow down. Too far away from it, you get speed, but you're going extra distance. And it's different for each boat. So each boat has a different VMG, and that's all centered around what they call the polars, which is the optimum speeds and wind for different wind angles, and that, of course, this is also associated with the sail plan. And they're very different for the different boats. So if I was to illustrate here, and I just did a quick image here just to sort of help explain some of that. And if you can sort of come in a bit closer here, Dale, on the top left, and I'll use the cursor. So if you look at the top left, and this is a rather dodgy sketch of say, for the sake of argument, Comanche or Law Connect on the left, and then Blackjack and Wild Oats. And very beamy indeed. So if you look at Comanche, she's 7.8 in the beam, as opposed to, say, Wild Oats, which is 5.1. So that's a massive difference. And the thing about Comanche is, as you can see here, she's got massive righting moment. Effectively, in that keel and that bulb, there's 15 tons in that alone. About 6.5 tons of water she can move around from one side to the other, and all of that mobile. So, 35 degrees either side of centre for the keel. That'll swing through in about 25 seconds, and then they can dispense water and transfer that as well. Ken Reid described sailing Comanche a little bit like sailing a catamaran. You just constantly have to have a hull in the air. So she has massive wetted surface when she's sitting on the floor, or on the water. Anybody who saw her coming up in the Derwent and just sitting like glue will have realised what that difference made. So she has to be constantly healing. And at about 20 to 25 degrees, she's got the same wetted surface as Wild Oats and Blackjack, but she has to be at that level all of the time. Because she's so powerful, because she's got all that righting moment, she can actually wear a good deal more sail, but also because she's that fast, she produces more apparent wind, and therefore she tends to have shallower sails. So that's a sort of really tricky calculus. So she has to be sailing at optimum speed. She can't go too low, or she gets wetted surface issues. Go too high and she's wasting distance. For the skinnier boats, slightly too long a looking keel here, same thing, water ballast, still got people on the side. But for those guys, you can imagine the wetted surface is not changing very much on heel. Less power in the thing, but the virtue of these guys is that they can run much deeper. So if you heard Mark Bradford, he was talking about the sails they're setting that are taking them deeper and deeper. And if you look at the true wind angles, and Mark was talking about that, I think Comanche the most extreme at about 135s downwind, whereas for Wild Oats at about 155. And between those two, Blackjack a little bit closer to Law Connect, and Law Connect a bit closer to Comanche. So what does that actually all mean when you're on the course? Well, this is a sort of extrapolation of Peter Eisler's weather routing, very, very crudely. But fundamentally, this evening on the first night, here they are coming down the coast, probably a little bit east of the Rum Line. There's a bit of an eddy down here, but they'll be probably closing Green Cape and heading down. So if you imagine that the red is Comanche, you'll see that she's got to be sailing bigger angles. So as soon as she came out, we were flying over her when we were shooting this afternoon. She was already heading out on a wider angle. Not greatly dissimilar at this point, but it's actually when they close on Green Cape that you start seeing what Peter Eisler showed is basically one massive tack off to this edge, and then back in to close in at Tasman Light, Tasman Island. Whereas for Blackjack, she's able to, or Wild Oats, they're able to sail that little bit deeper, shallower angles when they jibe, but they're not going as fast. And that's why two completely different boats can end up, or four completely different boats can end up in Storm Bay and in Derwent River at the same time. Red guy is going really fast but going more distance. Blue guy is going a little less fast, but he's going more directly to the destination. So in crude form, that's what it's about. And this is not exclusive to 100-footers. So we were speaking to Mike Green on Quest this morning before they left. And he was saying that their advantage, particularly when it's going to get really fiery on Tuesday, Wednesday, or before the cold front that's on the west here comes in, probably wind speeds up to 30-35 knots. For Quest, she's narrower, she can go deeper, and she can hold sail for longer. For, say, the likes of Guilo, and speaking to Billy Merrington on board, and he was saying they're hoping it's not over 30 to 35s, because actually they then have to reef and then go down the scales in the A sails, because they've got so much beam at the back that actually it's putting the nose in more regularly. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys go when they get to the bottom. So that's all of the effect of that. I might just quickly go to the weather, just because that's pretty important here. Maybe just come down to here. So the synoptic chart here on at this point here is showing, this is I think on pretty much as we speak now. Oh sorry, this is the Wednesday one. Let's just come back to the Tuesday. So this is sort of 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and you can see the big high off to sort of southeast of the course, and then here's the cold front coming through, and there's actually a little bit of a high squeezing in through here, and it's all these compressions that are actually sort of accelerating the speed, so that if you go to, let's just go to predict wind, my little favorite, thoroughly recommend this to anybody who wants to sort of get a pretty easy grasp of what the wind looks like. And here we are, this is 27th of December, 0251, so that's sort of the morning of the early morning, the second day. And you can see here's the sort of high off to the right, and you can see the patterns coming round, classic sort of southern hemisphere, all of the breeze coming round to the right, and you can see how fast it's beginning to pile. And as you move forward through the weather for the next couple of days, you'll see down into Bass Strait it's beginning to get really fired up, flares a little bit going west, but they're going to be off here. The red is the strongest breeze, and then as you go through and follow that through, you begin to see just how strong that's going to get. And then the trick for all of these guys is to get down south far enough here that they don't end up getting caught in this little change, which is in fact that cold front coming through, which gradually through the afternoon will rotate and go north. If you miss this, you're out of it. And talking to Bruce Taylor on Hutzpah, he was saying they think they're probably going to struggle to get through that one. So that's absolute key. Going back to the point about the big boats as well, when we come back here, when it's really firing down here, is every degree off the stern of the boats is going to advantage the big wide boats, because they can just get more apparent wind, they can arc up fully. So the interesting balance in this race, and it's one of the reasons why perhaps the record may not go, is the wind is relatively square most of the way behind them, and that suits the skinnier boats. They can run deeper. As soon as Mark Bradford said, as soon as it starts coming off and off the quarters, then they're losing it to the big boats. So that's it in very basic summary. More than happy to hear any critique of that. As I say, I'm really mostly taking that from the true experts, but it'll be very interesting to see how that all pans out in the next couple of days.